Jaunās mūzikas festivāls ARÄNA. Saklausi nākotni.
Vai mūsdienu mūzikai ir pilsonība vēsta šī vakar diskusijas tēma, un man liekas, ka laikam nav neviena labāka mūziķa kā šī vakar viesi ansamblis mūziķim, globāliste Ulrike un komponistu, kuri varētu tiešām atbildēt uz šo jautājumu, ja arī rosināt smadzeņu plēku šajā sakarā. Kādēļ tieši viņi? Kā jau jūs noprotat, iespējams, ka šāds neparasts sastāvs, blokflauta un kontratenors ir sastāvs, kas droši vien nav pats par sevi rosinājis daudz jaundarbu, un tā arī ir sfēra, ar ko nodarbojas šie abi mūziķi. Tā ir tāda, varētu teikt, labā nozīmē kampaņveidīga jaundarba pasūtīšana, ko viņi ir veikuši visdažādākās pasaules valstīs, ietverot pa 4 kontinentus. Es nosaukšu varbūt dažus no tiem. Ja jūs atvērtu mūziķu mājaslapu, jūs varētu tā skaisti saklasificētu un sastruktūrētu ieraudzīt Grieķu projektu, Japānas projektu, Ķīnas projektu, Turcijas projektu, Vācijas projektu, Francijas projektu, un es varu turpināt, un, piemēram, šogad ir paredzēts šo jaundarbu klāstu turpināt ar Skandināvijas projektu, Azerbaidžānas projektu, Eģiptes projektu, Argentīnas projektu. Tā kā jūs jau apmēram nojaušat, cik milzīgs spektrs šim duetam ir, kā teikt, viņu radošajā ētienkartē. Un šodien lasīju viņu mājaslapā tādu vienu no viņu misijas uzstādījumiem, kas ir kā skan kā tāds plakāts, bet savā ziņā es domāju, tas ir ļoti patiesi, ka viņa radošā darbība ir tā kā spogulis mūsu laikmetām. Par to nav šaubas, jo tiešām visa mūzika, ko atskaņo duets mūziķim, tā ir mūzika, kas ir radusies pēdējo gadu laikā. Otrs jautājums, vai viņu repertuārs un viņu muzicēšana arī ir spogulis nacionālajai daudzveidībai, vai tiešām atgriežoties pie šī vakara tēmas, vai mūsdienu mūzikai ir pilsonība, kā tas ir kā uzskatām liekas Grieķijas projekts, Latvijas projekts un tā tālāk, vai tiešām to var tik viegli pamanīt, ka katrā šajā valstī arī tad iezīmējas pilnīgi kaut kāda cita tā kā nacionāla krāsa šai laikmetīgai mūzikai, vai tas tā ir, vai tas tā nav. Par to mēs šovakar runāsim, bet mēs gribētu sākt ar tādu radošu uzdevumu, kuru mēs īstenībā gribētu jūs iesaistīt, lai jūs arī tā kā sākat uzreiz ar tādu aktīvu domāšanu. Es gribētu palūgt arī tos klausītājus, kas sēž tā attālāk panākt tuvāk, tāpēc, ka uz krēsliem ir kādas mazas lapiņas, ir rakstīts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Un tas ir tāds neliels radošs uzdevums, tā kā tāda minēšanas spēle. Ansamblis mūziķim jums atskaņos 5 fragmentus no sava repertuāra un dažādas mūzikas, kas ir tapusi pēdējo 2 gadu laikā. Un jums ir uzdevums vienkārši papilsofēt un padomāt diezgan no kuras valsts šī mūzika nāk. Un pēc tam mēs varam parunāt par to.
So, as we are going to talk about different national influences on the pieces, we simply suggest you to listen to several pieces and then have a guess where these pieces will come from. We won't say where they come from. Yeah. Treasure Napoli, très maigre et officier d'artillerie, d'artillerie. Et dans l'île de vin,
All Switzerland. question. Helvetia sponsor. Helvetia sponsor.
Mother?
Okay, France, then Scandinavia or Netherlands, Greece, Germany, and Great Britain.
Okay.
Me, okay. Belgium, Netherlands, Middle East, Spain, and the USA.
Okay.
France, Italy, Iceland, South America, Switzerland, UK.
France, a country where is a desert. Then of course any country. And the last one, some maybe USA or English speaking country.
So shall we say?
Yes.
The first one was Swiss. The second one was German. The third one was Turkish. The fourth one was Spanish. And the last one was Chinese. Hong Kong. Yeah, at least we have to say Hong Kong. Yeah. Now have a guess. How many women were the composers?
Three.
At least 2.
Three, I say.
Yeah. Okay. There were two women. How old were the women?
About 30.
No.
35, 31st.
One was 75. The other one was 35.
And together, 2, yes? So
Yeah,
my number.
two women. The first two pieces were by women.
Yes, the second sounded really like more female piece.
The first one was the piece of the 75-year-old woman. And how old was the Chinese when you wrote the piece?
Chinese. Man.
Yeah, it's the fifth piece.
7?
7.
About 40.
21. Yeah. And one of them is an actual Siemens Prize winner. Which one? The fourth. The fourth is a, I mean, you know that Siemens gives every year a big prize for the life achievement and 3 prizes to young composers. And the fourth is a piece by Luis Cordero, a Spanish composer who was he was awarded one of these composers' prizes. Then from which year do you think are the pieces? Is any piece older than 5 years?
No.
Is any piece younger than 1 year?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, so all the pieces are very actual. So that's it. Yeah. And all the pieces have been written for us. Yeah. Also. And, yeah. I don't know.
What was the name of the last composer?
Phoebus Lee. Likartai. So the first one was Maria Poppen, second one is Ulrike, third one is Mechthild Arniusson Selby, the fourth is Luis Cordero, and the last one is Phoebus Lee, or Likartai. Yeah. So, I don't know, is there anything you want to add to that choice of pieces? Simply to start the discussion on what nationality enters to your individual musical language. I don't know.
What is your experience?
Let us show some things. So, this is very high now. Well, it should be like a word map. So, what you can see is this is Europe. This is Asia, this is the America. So, what is missing is Africa, Middle East, South America. There are several reasons why Africa and Middle East is dangerous. This is a simple fact. It's not that easy to go there. The political situation is difficult. And yeah, structures as they are developed in Europe, they do not exist necessarily. Nevertheless, we performed also in the desert. We've been to Mongolia, among others, performing in the desert. And in South America, it's a bit different, but you cannot do everything in 5 to 6 years. I mean, these are the countries we've been active in. These are 26 countries. It's a lot. I mean, so it means you have to do a lot. I mean, this is what we did. We did around 600 concerts, all with contemporary music. On 4 continents and 26 countries. We commissioned 130 works. I mean, besides of that, we are both composers. So there are 15 professional ensembles performing our works. Almost 20 universities which have been collaborating with us. When I tell you this, it's simply to give you background on the experience we have. And when you say, what is our experience? So it's not about 2 or 3 concerts or working with 10 or 15 composers. It's a rich background. And then our work is related to different structures, ICM, you might know, the International Society of Contemporary Music, the UNESCO. This is the Commission for the Intangible Cultural Heritage, so it's another thing. And Swiss festivals, because we do run a festival for contemporary music in Switzerland, these foreign bodies, which is related, of course, to the Swiss Festivals Association, so you discuss with other festivals too. ZNET is an artist-run festival network. F is the European structure. Maybe to show you also the variety of what is contemporary music nowadays, I would like to present slightly also the World Music Days, who just happened. It's the 3rd to 12th October in Wrocław, and they were doing like a quite big thing. I mean, 50,000 people attending the festival. It's not nothing. When 1,000 artists taking part of it, 150 pieces, so many world premieres, Polish premieres, and 68 pieces reported to the ICM sections. So you have about 50 national sections presenting their pieces. So you can see where they came from. So you could attend to classical stuff. This is Angels of America by Piederībai. But also, I mean, these were ships having sirens. They had hundreds of sirens on the ships, and the ships were moving around like loudspeakers on the river, creating different constellations. That was, on the walls, attachment on the wall with pieces. So you had always like some kind of microphones playing with that. And it was a financial institute, so it was head of a protest piece also, doing in public area. This is Peaches. I don't know where you know her. She's an electroclash singer. So you have full of kids jumping on stage. Very trashy performance, but part of the World Music Days. This is a live installation done by a Polish artist. You might know that in Wrocław there's a very well-known building, the Centennial Hall, which was a very famous building in the beginning of the 20th century. And he made a very sophisticated work with sound and light installations. This is the piece who won the prize at the Young Composers Award, a piece by Stefan Fitz. It's a MIDI piano, so no live done sound anymore, playing with live video. This is a piece which is part of a symphony for 100 motorbikes and heavy metal band. So you have like the opera at the same time, 100 Harley-Davidsons playing with the motors and someone conducting how to deal with these sounds. This is a piece by Ulrike, one of these experimental techno popes, which was also part of the World Music Days. This is an installation of a Polish composer. I mean, you see it's well, it tracks back to the history of Wrocław also. And of course, let's say some classical pieces like orchestra and chamber music, of course, also. What I wanted to say about that is simply it's very, very wide. So there is no clear experience. So it's difficult for us to say what is the national language. And according to our point of view, basically we have individuals. And we have like a global world. And people are communicating with each other through virtual media, which makes it possible that you can have a Skype rehearsal with a Turkish composer, or a Chinese even. You simply have to deal with the time and you at the same time rehearsing. But basically you can work this way. You can transfer scores via PDF. So the communities are very wide, and the language is not that much related to a nation, maybe to other terms, but not necessarily to nation. And what happens in the styles also is things become more and more hybrid. Hybrid in the sense of intermediate, multimedia, and inter or multicultural. I mean, my grandparents, they came from the same village. The generation of my kids, they come from different continents. I mean, maybe next generation different planets, I don't know. But it gets more and more spread. So the question of nationality is not that clear. Maybe you want to add to that something?
Yes, actually we were discussing this question a little bit before, but yes, for example, though I completely agree to everything that you say, I can say that I, as a person and also as a composer and a listener, I think that still there can be quite common spirit of people who belong to a specific, let's say, region, even if it is not like a country with specific geographic borders. So I remember saying by American composer George Crumb, who said that, for example, he believes that each composer is very much influenced by even a landscape where he grew up. For example, he grew up in a mountain area where he heard a lot of echoes, and if we analyze his music, there are really a lot of echoes that somehow identifies him.
Like subconscious.
Yes, and so somehow it also works more in subconscious level. And of course, we can also discuss that maybe there is some impact of our native language, because each language also has its specific articulation, and maybe some subconscious level also even our language influences also our musical articulation. And of course there are more general things like cultural background, education, but also can bring more specific impact on composers. So yes, anyway, I would like to raise up like very simple question that while you were traveling in all these separate countries with commissioning and performing works by different composers, could you feel this common spirit, though each project incorporated many individualities, that there was something common, even the personalities were very different?
Somehow, yes. But the question, I mean, when we discussed together, we mentioned that too. I mean, the question is it really existing, or is it simply a projection that we want it to exist? I come to Latvia, I want the Latvians to be one nation. So it's my way to make a step to understand them. And the more I know them, the more differentiated things get. So, of course, I could say, I mean, Swiss people, they, historically, you look at Swiss music history, they were strong at small forms. They were not doing like this Russian epic stuff going from St. Petersburg to Vladivostok. So it goes from one village to the other. So the lead form was a very developed form, let's say, in Swiss music. But to reduce Swiss music to this is simply stupid. So it's somehow it's like an anecdote, because you can say in Russia you will find like very beautiful small forms too. So it's really for me it's very tricky. It's like a trap, somehow. So it's no more than a first step so it's like your first vocabulary. You have like these first words to get in contact with someone. Then, of course, there are specific things. I mean, To give an example, back to Russia again. I mean, when I realized once that the Russians they do not say I have bread. They will say the bread is next to me. And this is very strange to me, to express it this way. It's like, oh, there's a bread next to me. I won't touch it. It's like a being next to me, which makes that what is the word for interpretieren? Interpret? Yeah, okay. So I interpret, so I somehow project my way of perceiving Russian through that term. So is it really this or is it not? The only thing I perceive is difference. The difference between my concept, also the concept of my language, let's say, and the concept of another language. And if you speak different languages, you know the problem, and you have to translate. And you know the nuances of one language, and you see, oh, it's not that easy to give an adequate translation. And you have to somehow change the sentence completely to get maybe the same sense, but you cannot translate word by word. So, somehow there are common things, and they are related. Also, that we realized, and Ulrike, and we also taught you, that if you take the individuals, let's say individuals, you take a group, there's something different appearing. It's like when we did the project with the Greeks, for example. I wouldn't say every Greek is a philosopher, but at the same time, every Greek does understand philosophic words because it's their own vocabulary. All these words, which are difficult for us to understand, for Greek they're super simple. These are their words, so they understand. So are they philosophers, or do they simply understand what they are saying? Do you understand what I mean? So when I face all this Greek, I feel they're using these words. So these words appear to me to be very philosophic, because I learned these words from philosophy. I didn't learn these words in a daily context. So if these people use that in a daily context, I will interpret that as philosophic. So is it really philosophic or is it not? So somehow it's tricky. So I see 10 Greek composers, and it appears to me, because I have a concentration of many of these people, so it becomes stronger. But is it because it's really this way, or is it simply because I interpret it? So it's in the end, I end up with the fact of as I told before, these criteria are nothing else than like a simple vocabulary to enter somewhere. So you learn like the first words, and then you could communicate with people. In the end, you end up with individuals. Because in the end, I think also everyone wants to be respected as an individual. If you are composers, you want to be respected as a composer, as an individual composer. Not like a one of 20, and we do it all the same way. So, so that's what happens. It takes time, but it's, the result is quite. What shall I say?
Do you feel, let's say, on citizenship of mentality in each project that you are making, let's say, Greeks, Turks, Latvians, that there is anyway, though it is diverse, but there is a common spirit of mentality within one specific project, though individuality is of course different?
I think this is not necessarily related to music.
Of course, music is...
you go to a country which is... think of Germany in 1989. There was something happening there when the war disappeared. beautiful, and you go there, and these things are around. So you would feel that only in music. It's simply around. You go to Greece, you feel the crisis. We've been to Greece several times. The first time you went to any street, you saw 10 shops. Two of them were closed. 3 months later, 6 of them were closed. 8 months later, 8 to 9 were closed. So you go there, there's something in the air. But it's not necessarily related to the music.
But it can be.
It can be, of course.
Of course, artists consciously or consciously also reflects on
Yeah,
how he is, and what is his.
I think of course, yeah, cultural backgrounds, but they're not necessarily related to the nation.
Yes.
I mean, to give another example, when we first performed Chinese pieces, that was really somehow weird for us. Not that one here, because I mean, you all guess that piece to be European. Basically, it is a European piece. It doesn't have anything to do with Asian culture. It's simply using the codes of European music. But there are other composers that do not use these codes. And that was the very challenging thing for us, because these pieces, they were dealing with time completely differently. They were dealing with colors completely differently, and they were dealing with sounds and musical forms completely differently, according to their background. To give a small example, so, I mean, it's very simplifying, but you might know that Chinese, the meaning of Chinese words is not only given by the letters. It's also transmitted by the intonation. So there are basically 4 intonations, which is one is flat, one is rising, one is going down, one is doing like a wave-like thing. And the meanings are not related. So the this means Coca-Cola, newspaper, the sun is shining, and I don't know, the church is open, whatever. No, it's not etymologically related. This means if you want to express these nuances, you need space. I mean, I don't know, I didn't make any research on that, but if you think of having 1 octave with a pentatonic system, you have minor thirds and seconds. If you have a 12 half tones, the space is too small to make these nuances. So this means you sing a text, you have small intervals, you cannot understand anymore. So you need like bigger intervals to have these nuances clear with these microtones. But if you statistically, I mean, this is really, don't take me on that word, it's not a research word, it's simply like a reflection. If you say statistically, you want to transmit 100% of content, and suggesting or supposing that our culture is transmitting 80% by the instrument material, and the rest with other terms. Let's say the Chinese, they have 5 intervals within an octave. They can only transmit, let's say, maybe like 20% on that. But they will compensate with sound, with time, and musical forms. I mean, this is simply supposing. That's not nothing to do with science. But that was our experience, that approaching these Chinese pieces with the same stereo as facing European pieces didn't work at all. You have like your matrix, and it doesn't work. So you simply have to change it and to shift the priorities to something else, which also takes time and work. But it's amazing, because we are used to have Europe as the center of the world. Coming back to the World Music Days, I mean, the guys in Vancouver, they will host the World Music Days in 2 years, and they had a very nice slogan, which was, if you see Vancouver as the middle of the world, Europe is on the east, and Asia is on the west. So And so, yeah, they would say, so Vancouver, yeah, Europe to the east, Asia to the west. It's simply shifting the reference point. And that's an interesting exercise. So if you come back, so due to the culture you've been growing in, you might have different influences, but they're not necessarily that clear anymore. So it influences you, but if you have like a Chinese father and an African mother, and you train in Europe, what will you do? I mean, you get somewhere where yeah, you simply find something, but which is not related to a nation, or not even clearly to one cultural background. Because you might have a Chinese father, an African mother, you have your music training in Europe, and your hobby is diving. And you like, I don't know, I mean, you like corn. So, and you spend time on finding out what the different kinds of corn are they growing, because of your community where you share your knowledge with 20 other specialists around the world. I mean, it might sound stupid, but what would you like to deduce as a rule? What is your cultural background related to a nation?
But anyway, I think that I also read from your leaflet that one of the areas of your creative research is European music versus non-European music in relation to the concept of form, time, and sound. So anyway, though maybe nationality in music is a very problematic question, anyway, you believe in cultural background. There is European cultural background and
but this is
Chinese.
But this is not general. This is due to the two of us as individuals. Because my education is a European one. Fully European. Never even that, because I grew up with this. But this is not the general thing. I cannot expect everyone to have the same education. So if we put this ensemble, if we put out this ensemble, we reflect our own cultural background by facing others. Because this, it's not about, we're not making Chinese music, we're performing pieces by Chinese writing for European. This is a different thing. And by these people facing what our cultural background is, we learn more about ourselves. So, yeah, so it's not that I believe generally in these cultural backgrounds. I know mine is this. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily a cage, but it exists simply. And I'd like to understand that. And this motive to understand is what I'm doing with through music.
But I think also Cage, for example, he was aware of these philosophical and also musical codes what he adapted from Far East culture, like from also India, from China.
Who are you talking about?
Sorry?
Who are you talking about?
About Cage, you mentioned
Yeah.
Cage.
No,
But
I
he
didn't
was
mention Cage.
interested in Far East culture. You didn't mention Cage?
No.
Sorry, misunderstanding.
Well, we can talk about everyone.
But anyway, if we speak about Cage, I think he was aware that he's adapting in his philosophical and in his musical language codes of Far Eastern culture, both in philosophical and both in also musical thinking.
Yeah.
So also these codes exist. We cannot say that they do not exist. Of course, we mix them up and we make it in our own individual way.
This is about evolution.
Yes.
So, I mean, defining criteria is not the reality. Defining criteria is simply like a starting point to get to understand things. So you shouldn't stop at these criteria because they always change. Basically, they permanent evolution. So what we call this now, well, I mean, ask scientists about the reality of presence. If the present does really exist or not. But I mean, what we call this in 1 second will be changed. The only thing is, does the majority realize that? And at what point the majority will change the name for that fact? So it's like you have like a soft shifting from one to the other, but the word won't change that softly. The word keeps until the one, and then it changes to the next one. It's to give you another example, a very stupid but very basic one. Our eldest daughter, as my wife and me were calling ourselves by our first names, she called us by our first names. Mama and Papa were not existing. Mama and Papa started to exist when she was socialized. So when other people entered and said, what is Mama doing? What is Papa doing? Then all of a sudden, when these people, she was saying our first names 50 times, but when she heard Papa and Mama from other people more than 100 times, she would start to say Papa and Mama. The thing is, one day or another, I will say to my daughter, what is Mama saying? So you have like a soft shifting, and all of a sudden, this word appears. So basically, these things are shifting very softly, and at one certain moment, the word changes. And I think that's my experience, I think. I mean, unless you have really violence around. Violence in the sense that, you're forced to use another word. But basically, these things are changing very softly. As you learn an instrument, you don't learn it in 1 hour. It takes you years, and all of a sudden you realize, oh, I'm able to do that. And you wouldn't realize that as fast, maybe, I don't know. But, yes, so these shifts, they're really very soft.
You once said that nationality is illusion.
Pardon?
Nationality is illusion.
No, nationality is a reality.
Sub-reality.
Pardon?
Sub-reality.
A sub-reality, yeah, maybe, yeah.
Also nice. Without illusion, also nice, and sub-reality illusion, also nice.
Yeah.
If merge.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm not saying, the only thing I'm saying is nationality is not the only criteria. I mean, this is simply a first step. Then you have to go beyond. And nowadays, I think nationality is not really, it doesn't really matter anymore. Not musically, at least. Of course, politically, this is another thing. But to your own personal development, the nation is not really the criteria. There are other borders to cross or to face. I mean, it's like when I once realized, and when people tell me, it's like Europe is based on the Roman Rite, on the Greek philosophy, and the Christianism. And then I say, is that true? And I started to think, oh, maybe that's right. So you have like a spiritual background, with Christianism giving you like a social network, the Greek philosophy, which is like about the ethics or how to organize a society, the Roman Rite, which is according to the laws, and the army, or whatever, the efficiency. So these like the 3 pillars. And if we talk about European music, for example, one or two, I would say there are 2 terms which are quite specific. One is dialectics, so thesis, antithesis, synthesis. This is typically European. Don't talk to Chinese this way. They won't understand. Or you won't understand Chinese if you think this way. It's completely, this is very, very European. It's like die Sonaten Hauptsatzform. Thema gegen Thema Durchführung. And the other one is the Registerausgleich, we say in German, which is the blending of registers, which is like an aesthetic ideal. You have like the symphony orchestra, it's about blending colors, basically. If you compare that to Chinese or to African music, They're not into blending colors. They're into completely different things. Basically, you can do blend colors, of course. I mean, but the culture is not. They have not, and there's a written culture also. I think that is something which is very, very typical for our culture. We have a written tradition, not an oral tradition. We have developed a very sophisticated way to imitate music and to read music. But this changes completely the perception of music. Because you don't necessarily have to listen. I mean, it's like facing people telling me, why do you do contemporary music until you listen? Did you ever think that you learn music from dead composers transmitted by CDs and books? I do learn music from living composers. I give them a call, I meet them, I have a coffee with them. This is the most natural thing. So the fact of having an education based on dead composers, books and CDs is only possible because we have a very sophisticated way of writing music. Which is nice. I mean, you have access to all this. It's not basically bad. But it changes your attitude. And other peoples have another tradition, so they have another attitude. And there we go back, they are criteria related to whatever it is, but not necessarily to nation.
Listening to what you are saying, could we make states like that evolution have killed the national school?
Not yet.
Anyway, there are also enough composers who are even consciously using these national elements in order to make their music more specific. Like, for example, first composers were coming Chinese composer who is, he's living in America, but he's somehow consciously trying to emphasize his national codes within his music using these Chinese rites, and this also somehow makes his music more Chinese, more specific, and more maybe...
Of course. I mean, Latin American composers the same, African too, from the Arab world also. So we have like a mixing moment now, which is, let's say, the so-called classical music used to be very European-centric, Eurocentric, and it's breaking up, it's opening up, which is fascinating. So you have all these other things merging in. These processes have already started in other, look at pop music or rock music or jazz, and Africa has already completely merged our music, unconsciously, somehow. And the others are about to do the same. So, and these countries, many of these countries, they're putting up now structures which are of an European tradition. So the music academies in Latin America, of course they have a they go on with European tradition. I mean, simply of the academy, the way of teaching is a European tradition, and they might teach other things. The same in the Arab world. The fact of having an academy is not their tradition. They were supposed to learn these things in a different way. But nowadays, in Switzerland, you can study rock music. You can become a specialized rock guitarist, specialized in lyrical 62 to 64. I mean, it's absurd, but it's as absurd as people being specialized in early Italian rock from Venice from a gap from 10 years. It sounds very scientific, but it's like I'm a specialized rock guitarist in early U2. It's like I'm a specialist of early Galician. It's basically the same. You can study this in an academy. So you have this mixings, so where different cultures come into European structures. So you take the best from everything, and you try to make something with that. I mean, this is basically fine. And these countries, they somehow articulated themselves by their own roots. as they reflect their own roots facing others, as we do. When you say we reflect European versus non-European traditions, there's nothing else that I try to understand where I come from. And the contrast is very inspiring. But it's so that it's become evident. So I will better understand what white is when I know what black is. So if I'm white to broken white, yeah, of course, there's a difference. But I would get the notion of white much clearer than facing black. Simply, I mean, there's more to get to know about. It's easier, we have easy access to know all these things. There's nothing to lose, of course not. Things will simply develop in another way. And think of what happened to the world when the Mongolian came. When you had all these people walking through Europe, and the Vandals going to Africa. They were coming out of nowhere from what the Ukraine is nowadays. In the Ukraine there were Vikings coming there. The Kiev were Vikings. And then they went to South, and then the Vikings went to South Italy. At the same time, I don't know, the Christians went everywhere, and there were cultures disappearing, others coming up, and these things happen today the same, for the bad, for the good. I mean, so we have to trust in humanity that they are created, then something nice will happen.
Slowly we have to start to conclude our discussion. If there is some final question, if you would feel safer to make it in Latvian, you can also translate if there is something in your mind.
Maybe I have something naive, and maybe it will sound like a bit spectacular, but I propose that maybe the individual and also kind of national won't disappear, because it can be as a thing of power. We are like Christians. You mentioned they spread their culture for plenty of reasons in the medieval times. Now we are also competing. I think also we have art, but also it is a competition about who will hear our voice also in some big decision making, maybe in politics, and maybe conscience. It is not like simply, we're going to guide the conscience of masses, but I think maybe it has a social way also.
I don't understand exactly what you want to say.
That simply that as far as I know, we here in Latvia, we have a big. I'm studying now musicology. We have a folk revival movement, and now it is a big demand from our government to invest into the science, and because we need to construct and reconstruct our identity.
Mm-hmm.
And we are using those national tools, and I guess it will continue because it is like a counterforce to globalization. It is a mean to compete.
Well, there are people saying that Europe is going to be balkanized, split into multi-ethnics. But I mean, they were talking about social and political decisions, not necessarily about artistic decisions. And I think artists are not necessarily into creating new borders, but to break borders. This is what arts are about. It's not about breaking, but opening up, maybe. Because it's not necessarily related to violence. It can be violent. But I think the arts are about opening these things. And whatever happens, I mean, we're in a transition period, at least in Europe. We have big changes around. And big decisions to take and to make. And so there are different approaches. Some of them are restricting, and some of them are opening up. So up to you to choose what you want to do. So if you follow the ones or the others, I think that's a big question. So
So the artists should be the strongest ones to give their...
There's one thing about the artists. I mean, the artists are... I think the fact of choosing their profession as an artist is a very realistic one. And at the same time, it gives you freedom. I think the artists are one of the professions where freedom is very important. So you say financial restrictions, they are not the criteria to drop things. And I don't know whether the artists are the strongest or not, but it's certainly one of the professions where criteria, which are very important nowadays, like money, are not the motives necessarily, because otherwise you would do anything else.
No, I'm still thinking about this national idea that when you go out of your nation, you have to be with a strong opinion or strong idea to still be a personality.
But then you simply face humans.
Yeah, but you have to be like with some other idea, not the nationality or not the.
Well, it's
still not like
somehow. I mean, there are people who ask me in other circumstances, how do you deal with the fact of people not understanding what you are doing? So can listen. If I might perform, or it's about the attitude. I might not understand what the musician in front of me is doing, but at a human level, I will understand, is he a fake? Or is he not doing something which is existential somehow? And I think this is a reference. Try to do it this way. I mean, sometimes it will be better, sometimes maybe not. But you keep that attitude, everyone will understand. You go anywhere in the world, no one's preaching. You know who is not honest with you. The only thing is, do you want to know it? But basically, you feel that. So it's like this. You don't necessarily have to understand what you do. I'm not saying you simply have to feel. I'm not into these things, but it's a mixture of both. And I think this is think on what you're doing and try to put it in a context with an attitude of sharing and an attitude of facing something. Even if you fail, people will be grateful. To give another example, I grew up with many languages. I grew up with 6 or 7 languages. So I wasn't, for a long period, I was like intolerant to people who were not able to speak so many languages. As a singer, you sing different. I was always like more or less capable to understand what I was singing. Until I started to sing Chinese. And that was like going nice, no reference and floating somehow. And I was thinking about my Korean and Japanese fellows studying at the same time with me. I was really facing being very intolerant. And then I went to China, I had a piece, I mean, it was like 3,000 words a minute. It took me 3 years to get a piece, at least I had like 70% of the words at the right place. But the first performances, it was not more than 20-25%. Hopefully it was like a small northern Chinese dialect no one was really understanding. But nevertheless, I knew I was far away from that. And these people were so incredibly grateful. And yeah, because they're so obvious in European, and he's having pain to doing it. And then you realize, oh, I mean, maybe I should simply stop and try to see, is he making an effort? I mean, maybe he's simply failing, but it's not because he doesn't want to, because it's simply difficult. So maybe I should change my attitude of trusting that people might do an effort, but they're not capable. So then I should help them, because there might be the case where I will need help too. It's a risk, but no risk, no fun. It's that's the other part of the game. Contemporary music is a risk, so you have to be prepared on that. So I won't say that we are only happy with the pieces we get. That it's only easy to rehearse this. That it's not frustrating. It is frustrating. It's difficult. But the challenge is something, or the fact of being in these dynamics, you get somewhere to a point which is very satisfying. Because you're conscious, you become conscious. I think this is a nice thing to achieve. Maybe not for everyone, but for me it is. Maybe that is the sentence.
So maybe we can now make a soft transition to artistic coda, what I know that is in your plan.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to, we would perform the second part of these pieces of Luz Cordera Bufon, the Spanish. It was number 4.
lance descend vers la pointe de ses guises. De tout son corps, des loups et roule ensemble, glissant, avec